Hey there, welcome. My name is Jessica Buchanan, and I'm a New York Times bestselling author, professional speaker, and founder of Soul Speak Press, a non traditional publishing company created for women who've been through something, now they know something, and they can teach us something. In Her Words is a podcast designed to support aspiring memoir authors on their writing and publishing journey. It's hard work, this writing and publishing stuff, and I want to empower you with encouragement and information so you can keep sharing your truth. So grab your coffee, your notebook, find a quiet space, and let's dive in. Well, hey everybody, how's the writing going? I am so happy that you have joined me for another episode of In Her Words. I appreciate the time that you take. I appreciate the time that you take to write and then to learn more about your craft of memoir writing or creative writing. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about the future of memoir and answer some questions that I think, I've been asked as a publisher, and things that I see coming across social media, and just in the current conversation around memoir and publishing in the first place. So here I'm just going to kind of do a back and forth. I'm going to share the questions. I have a whole list of questions, and then I have a whole list of answers that I want to bring to your attention and have a discussion around when it comes to the future of memoir. Is memoir here to stay? I don't know. Let's find out. So the first question I've been asked is, why do you think readers are hungrier than ever for true stories? First of all, I'll ask you, why do you think readers are hungry for true stories? Do you think they are, or do we feel like we're living in dystopian times and we need a an escape from our reality? I do think people are hungry for real true stories because we're living with the continued rise of social media in a time of just mistrust, heavily curated highlight reels. Um, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know what the real stories are. So much of what we see online feels polished. It's filtered or manipulated. I'm finding, and maybe this is just because I'm old, but like I'll see stuff and I'm like, that is crazy. Like, how can that be possible? And then my like son will be like, that's AI. Like, that's not real. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about AI. I forgot that everybody is filtered and polished and they only share little snippets. I mean, I'm guilty of it too, right? I'm not popping on Instagram when I'm feeling uninspired and depressed. I'm only popping on there to share good things probably that are happening in my life. Um, Readers are craving something real. We want something human. Memoir gives us that unvarnished truth. Oftentimes it's like very raw and unfinished and messy. When someone is willing to share honestly about their life, it gives the reader permission to be honest about theirs. Think about this. Like when I think about a really honest memoir, that I've read recently, it would be The Many Lives of Mama Love. And I've recommended it to a lot of my authors and our clients as an example of real true gritty memoir. She is really brave in allowing us to come in to her experience and judge her. She openly I don't think welcomes, but she openly permits the reader to come in and judge her. I won't go into detail in case you haven't read the book. Highly recommend though. It's a great, great, great read. Um, and she was kind of shitty for large parts of her life, especially to her kids. And she owns her shit. And I find that very refreshing when a reader does that, or when an author does that, because as the reader, it gives me a model. It shows me that it's possible. Redemption, is often what comes after that series of events in a memoir, and it just helps me feel like a better person. I think that's why we like we started liking reality TV and now I don't know, it's like turned into a whole thing. But okay. Here's the second question. What makes memoir different from autobiography? And I've talked about this a lot, right? Autobiography is chronological. It's an account. This happened and then this happened. This person was born on this date and then their husband died on this date. Me- Um, memoir is less about everything that happened and more about what it means. So I say this all the time. Don't tell me what happened. Tell me what you learned about it. Tell me what it means to you. Tell me how it changed you. We want the story of transformation, not the story of the account and the events. It's interpretation, reflection, and connection. Just telling me what happened doesn't give me pause. Even in some circumstances where stories are incredible, I find the most moving parts of my story to share are not, the things about eating tuna fish out of a tin with a tampon applicator. It's about the days in the desert where I had these really um, transformational experiences going back and reliving my life and how much that changed me. Circumstances were wild, but it's really about who I met in the process, and that was myself, which is what differentiates narrative nonfiction or autobiography from memoir. Why do memoirs resonate so highly right now? Um, I think that they're not just telling stories about someone else's life, they're showing us how to make meaning out of our own experiences. And whether or not you can articulate that or say that out loud, we want to make meaning out of our own experiences. We want our lives to mean something, right? And those of us who write, that's why I think we write, is to make meaning out of the trauma and the pain. We have to make it mean something in order for it to be bearable. A good memoir teaches us how to live, not just how someone else lives. This is why it's so important. You've been through something, now you know something, and you want to teach us something. It's not just the story or the account of someone, how they lived, it's how we can apply that to our lives and how we can live. Okay, so next question. Why do people want these vulnerable, real narratives? Aren't like isn't life hard enough? Why do we why do we need to read about somebody else's trauma? Isn't that going to re-traumatize us? Okay, so when someone shares their most difficult or tender moments, it breaks down the wall of isolation. Readers don't just see someone else's story, they see themselves. They connect, and especially in times of collective uncertainty or loss, which is really where I'm at in the middle of things right now, real stories anchor us. They remind us that we're not alone. Um, and I am thinking about a client who her book comes out next year, and we were having a chat. We were storyboarding. She's going to record a book trailer in a couple of weeks, and she's a survivor of sexual assault within her family. And she said until she started talking about it when she was 50 years old, she thought she was the only one who had ever gone through something like that. And the reason she's writing this book is so that other people, other women out there who have been assaulted by other people know that they're not alone, because she genuinely kept her mouth shut for 50 years because she thought she was the only one. And it turns out there are millions of women out there, millions of people who have experienced something like this. So we have this need, we're pack animals, right? We have this need to know that we are not alone, that we are not isolated, and we share our stories to bring comfort and community, to create community. That's the biggest takeaway I've received from sharing my story in all the different capacities that I have, is that it creates community. And community is good. It feels good. It's necessary for our mental, our physical, our spiritual, and our emotional well-being. And when we share our stories, we are connected with the person who hears it and who listens to it. How is the memoir form changing? I think this is an interesting question, because I think it's really interesting what people are so incredible. They're so creative, they're so resilient. And if we think about like podcasting, for instance, and how that format has changed so much. And I don't know, like I've been listening to podcasts for 10 years now, regularly. I feel like I was kind of an early adopter. I never know which word to use there, of podcasting because I really wanted to have my own podcast. And this was like way back before people were like podcasting like I am now and at my desk in my home office. And there weren't a whole lot of podcasts to listen to and still kind of the Wild West, but that back then it definitely was the Wild West. Like the only one I really could find that I listened to pretty regularly was The Moth. And I loved it. It was awesome. And and so when we think about storytelling and how it has changed over time, think about that memoir is no longer just about linear storytelling. We're seeing hybrid memoirs that weave in research, cultural commentary, poetry, or art. I haven't read it yet, but I've heard Elizabeth Gilbert's new memoir, All the Way to the River, incorporates some drawings from her journals. We're also seeing collective memoirs, which to me, those are anthologies, and that's what we've been doing for years here at Soul Speak Press, where many voices tell a shared story. You know, we write about a theme. This next one coming up is Out of the Ashes. Formats like graphic memoirs, I think, is really interesting to think about. Someone who I think about in terms of graphic memoir is Chanel Miller. Say My Name if you haven't read that, or follow her on Instagram. She's an artist and she's an Asian American, and she did a lot of memoir, like graphic memoir, especially during the pandemic. And I find that fascinating. I love the way she sees the world and the way she shares it with us, because again, it can even memoir can be done obviously like through photography, through art, through different types of modes and installations. And then it's about like the most authentic medium for the story. The future of memoir isn't bound to the page, which I think is really fascinating to think about, like in terms of how we tell stories and how that has evolved as we have um, developed language. Think about pictures, cavemen, and the the Egyptians and the pictures and the pyramids and all the things. I'm so not using articulate, culturally uh sensitive language here. Forgive me. It's a Friday afternoon. This is the last thing I have to do today, as I record. But it has evolved into it, and even language has evolved, right? And will continue to do so. But thinking about that in terms of how it's going to affect how we take in people's stories, how we take those lessons in. Obviously, we know that social media has changed the landscape of publishing, especially when it comes to the memoir space. But I usually think of that as a negative thing. But it's interesting to think about it from a positive perspective too. Okay. Um, what should aspiring memoirists know about publishing today? Traditional publishing is all about celebrity memoirs, because they are risk averse and it's all about the bottom line and they want the guaranteed sales. So, but the rise of indie and hybrid publishing, hello, Soul Speak Press, means that important personal stories still have a place. They still mean something and they are going to connect with the reader who gets their hands on them. The trade-off is that you may need to invest more of your own time and resources. Um, but you've heard me say this before. You either pay on the front end or you pay on the back end. You're going to pay with your time. You're going to pay with your emotions. You're going to pay with your money. If you get a contract with a traditional publishing company, you're probably all that advance you're going to have to use for marketing anyway. So it's just depends on whether or not you want to let go of your creative rights and the rights that you have to your story. And when you work with hybrid and non-traditional, then you get to retain more of the creative control. Um, how should someone choose a publishing path? It's the next question. I have a whole course about this. Go to Soul Speak Press and it's like 7 hours of which publishing path is right for you. But I always say clarify your goals. If you want the broadest reach and are willing to go through a long competitive process, refer to, I believe it's season 3, episode 3, where I break down how many memoir contracts actually get sold each year since 2021. Look at the, pursue traditional. I say, like, if you're willing to shop around for a couple of years for an agent, that agent takes your proposal and you're teachable and willing to change things the way they want them. Most of the time, they'll want your memoir to turn into some sort of memoir manifesto where there's research or there's some sort of they want more bang for the buck. They don't want just the story and the lessons learned. They want a larger, more self-help. They want to be able to place it in different genres of books for sales. If that's fine with you, then stick with that route. If you want control, you want speed and a more collaborative process, then look at hybrid or indie presses. There's no one right path. It just depends on your story and your vision. All right. Here's something that we talk about a lot in terms of how to write memoir responsibly. Um, what about the ethics of writing memoir, especially when they involve other people? And, Anne Lamott is renowned for saying if people wanted you to write about them I'm paraphrasing here, in a positive light, then they should have been nicer. They should have been better. Um, Agreed. Although I think that there's a middle ground, and she does, she writes about her family's dysfunction a lot. Um, and she writes about her own dysfunction a lot, which is why we love her. Um, and oftentimes we have these stories, right? These hard stories because people have done really crappy things to us. And so the intersection of our story and telling it authentically usually crosses over into someone else's story and into their lives. I encourage, here's like a really great guiding post question for you. Am I telling this story to heal or am I telling it to harm? I or like, are you telling it to prove something? I had an author, we had a lot of back and forth. We had a lot of problems. We had to cut like 70,000 words from her manuscript, which she was not happy about. And I finally had to come out and write out and ask her and say, like, why are you writing this? And it was in a heated moment. And she was like, I need people to know that I was able to help this person. And I'm like, that's not good enough. Like, that's not why we write memoir. That's not worth investing thousands of dollars into to prove basically that you were right. That's not why we're here. That's not the right intention and the right motive to move from when we're writing a memoir. So what's your point? What's your reason? Why are you writing this? I mean, yes, you're going to have lots of different answers to that question at lots of different points in the process as you're crafting your manuscript and you're moving through that healing journey. But at the end of the day, you can sit down and you know the answer. What's your point? Why are you doing this? Why are you investing all this time and this money and this emotional angst into writing this memoir? Um, Sometimes you have to change names or write with compassion, even when the relationship was painful. The goal is to be honest without being careless. Okay, next question. How can writers protect themselves while writing about trauma? Oh, dear God, I just sent a manuscript over to my lawyer. Okay, work slowly, write in fragments, pay attention to your body. If you feel flooded or overwhelmed, step away. Writing memoir is powerful, but it should never re-traumatize you. Safety and pacing are just as important as honesty. So here's where I want to share some interesting information with you. I am obsessed with this book, Writing as a Way of Healing, by Louise DeSalvo. Unfortunately, she has passed. Otherwise, I'd love to have her come on the podcast because I find the information in this book to be absolutely life-changing. And I'm going to just read a couple of I mean, I have like, if you can see this, if you're watching this, I have like the whole thing like outlined, like everything's starred. Like, I mean, this book is just like no disrespect, but like it's my memoir writing Bible. Um, and she refers to some of these really interesting studies conducted by psychologists Penny Baker and Beale. Okay, and I'm not going to read you the whole book because that's boring. Go out and buy it yourself. But they discovered that to significantly improve your spirits long term, you must endure difficult feelings initially. So they did this experiment where they studied the health of students by counting the number of visits that they made to the student health service before and after they spent 4 days writing about traumatic experiences for 15 minutes. They had three control groups. One was just writing an account. One group was writing about how they felt. And then the third group had to write the account of what happened and then how they felt about it then and now for 15 minutes. What they found was that by like connecting the feeling to the event, the students who wrote about that for literally an hour over the course of 4 days, they saw a reduction in visiting the health center by 50% because writing down about your trauma and how it made you feel then and how it makes you feel now helps you process and get those emotions and that trauma out of your body so effectively that it boosts your physical immune system. I don't know why that just like I just think it's the most amazing thing ever. And so what happens is you're able to integrate, right? Integrate those experiences and they become a part of like your stored memory without causing the negative effects of, PTSD and all of the other things. And I know this for certain. This has been so, so clearly true in my own life. This is why writing has become my life breath. Like, this is why it's so essential. This is why I do it every day for work. To have to write emotions and feelings helps me understand how I felt and why. That is, yes, absolutely. Um, Integration takes us from this happened to me to now I get to choose what it means going forward. Writing thoughtfully and emotionally about traumatic experiences rather than writing about superficial topics or venting feelings or simply describing what happens seems to improve our immune system. And this improvement in Penny Baker's subjects tended to last for 6 weeks, is what it says. So, over time, Penny Baker explains the work of inhibiting traumatic narratives and feelings acts as an ongoing stressor and gradually undermines the body's defense. Like other significant stressors, inhibiting our stories and our emotions can adversely affect immune function, the action of the heart and vascular systems, and even the biochemical workings of the brain and the nervous system. How many of you have read The Body Keeps the Score? Hello. Often, though, the trauma remains undisclosed because though people would like to discuss it, they can't or won't because they fear punishment, embarrassment, or disapproval or shame because they can't find an appropriate audience. So many people actively stop themselves from telling their stories. They inhibit their need to tell their traumatic narratives. This, though, depletes immune functioning and increases incidence of physical illness. So, I know I went off on a tangent. I don't even know what question I was answering other than, let me look here. How can writers protect themselves while writing about trauma? Well, if you're writing about trauma and you're taking care while you're doing it, you're actually making yourself so much healthier. I abide by this. I believe in this so wholeheartedly. And I just think it's such an incredible gift to be able to write in general, and to be able to write about what happens to us. And I also believe so wholeheartedly in the fact that we don't look away from people's pain. And that's really what sets, I think, Soul Speak Press apart, is that we're here for the hard stories. We're here to help you alchemize them. We're here to help you process them and craft them into beautiful memoirs. And we spend a lot of time working on traumatic stories with our clients, but it's so necessary. We have to get these stories out so that people know that they're not alone. We have to get them out of our bodies so that we can be healthier and happier. And we have to get them out because it's our art, it's our expression, it's our creativity. It's as important to us as like eating and drinking. It's nourishment, not only for us, but for the people who read them. It's memoir is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's human. You know, we've told stories for as long as humans have been on the earth and had language. Memoir evolves with culture. Right now, it's more experimental, it's more collective, it's more inclusive, but the core impulse remains the same: to make sense of our lives and to connect with others through the truth, through our own truth. So, here's some encouragement. Start small, write about one moment. Here's your prompt: one image, one memory that still lives in your body. You know it does. Memoir isn't about perfection, it's about meaning. And your story, exactly as it is, it matters. It matters. It matters. It matters. So, here are the key takeaways. Memoir is about meaning, not chronology. Readers crave authenticity because it helps them feel less alone. The genre is expanding. Hybrid, experimental, collective, and multimedia memoirs are on the rise. Publishing is more accessible, but each path has trade-offs in control, cost, and reach. And writing memoir is both healing and ethical work. It requires honesty, pacing, and compassion. So we are here for you. If you need some help getting those words out onto the page, we have so many different ways that we can support you on that journey. Just reach out to us, hello@soulspeakpress, or go to our website, soulspeakpress.com. And at the end of the day, all that matters to me is that you keep writing. So carry on, write down that moment, write down that pain that's living in your body, explore it, give it time, give it 15 minutes a day for 4 days, and see if you can get rid of that cold. And if you do, if you're finding some release or some healing from it, let me know. I want to hear from you. In Her Words is hosted by me, Jessica Buchanan, and is produced by Soul Speak Press, a non-traditional publishing house for women who are ready to tell their story. If you would like to know more about our submission process, I encourage you to check us out at www.soulspeakpress.com or follow us over on Instagram at soulspeakpress. We appreciate all your questions, and if you would like to leave us a review, we would be so grateful.